Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Good morning and welcome to the programme. We'll be talking to Thomas Byrne in a second. We want to know first how you feel about the two most pressing issues of the day. Why wasn't Seamus Heaney on the Leaving Cert English paper? And what do you think of the great work John Déise is doing as a government envoy to Washington trying to get the visa issue sorted? Text us on 083 3333 975. You can call Audrey on 051 846 123. Also check out our Facebook page. On my Facebook page as well, we have the list of places that didn't receive the mayoral booklet. It continues to grow. Any more that didn't receive the booklet, please add to that ginormous list. We have sent off the list to the department. We're awaiting a response from Minister John Paul Phelan's department. Now, earlier in the week we heard the marvellous story of the lady who came into the broadcast centre here in WLR and left in money for Ciara from Cappoquin and her two children to go on holidays. Now we have another story of money. Thomas, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How things?
Good, thank you. Good. Thomas, tell us, you found some money yourself just yesterday, was it?
Yeah, I went up to the Clayboy shopping centre there before training, and I was just going into the London shop there, and I spotted this envelope on the ground. I picked it up, and I see where there was money inside it. I put it into my pocket. I went into the shop, done what I had to do, and I came back out and I checked it, and there was a nice £2 like inside it. So I just went back into the shop, gave my name and my number if anyone called into the shop, and I text yourself to know if anyone, because this could be someone's bill that they have to pay. You know, I don't like to see anyone out of pocket, and I don't want to see anyone getting out of it, like, you know.
Thomas, fair play to you, because there's a lot of people would just, well, there's some people that would just take that money and put it away and take it, because everybody could do it a few bob every now and then. Now, we're not going to give out the exact amount of money, but there is, as you say, an amount of money in it which is somebody would miss if it dropped out of their pocket or their handbag or whatever the case. More than likely they'd miss this amount of money. And it's in is it a brown envelope or a white envelope?
It's in a white envelope. There's a name in the envelope and the amount of money inside it. Like, and you're dead right, Damien. Like, it could make someone's weekend, and you know, it could put them in bed form for the weekend. There could be some child suffering or something along the lines. Like, and that's the last thing you want, like, you know. Absolutely,
and fair play to you, Thomas. And where are you living yourself? What club are you involved in?
And Ballylough Upper. The last time you were in front of me, I was nervous, and I'm nervous now talking to you.
Well, I'll tell you, it's part of the whole modern communication system. You contacted me on Messenger last night, and I really appreciate it. And I love the fact that you are, and people like you are contacting the show about this sort of thing, because it's lovely to think that we can try and do something good for people. We did it earlier in the week with Ciara, and there's somebody out there that's missing an amount of money. They've lost, obviously, they dropped an envelope. They may have gone into the shop in the Clayboy at the Londis in Waterford City, and you have the envelope with you, you have the name on it, and what we want is, we're not going to give out the name, so if people want to ring Audrey on 051 846 123, and if they're able to verify the name, what we'll do is we'll get in touch with you through Audrey, we'll get the person in touch with you, and we'll try and get this money back to the person, because as you say, it could make somebody's weekend, it could be an important thing. And listen, fair play to you, Thomas, you're very, very good.
Yeah, no hassle. Like, you know, it could be myself I would lose, and I know, like, you know, if someone handed it up, like, so anyone could be in the same boat. Like, no one can close doors. Like, anyone could lose that, like, you know.
Absolutely. And you're very good, and don't worry, I won't be nervous next time when you meet me, or you won't be nervous when I meet you. Thomas, thanks very much. Thomas Byrne there, thank you very much for joining us this morning, really appreciate it. So you've heard it there. If you have lost an amount of money up at the Clayboy shopping centre, call Audrey on 051 846 123. Call Audrey on 051 846 123. Now, this afternoon, a big issue is happening at Waterford City Hall. We're going to have the election of the next mayor of Waterford, and all the hassle about the plebiscite and everything like that. What's going to happen is the councillors basically are going to sort out who the next mayor is going to be. Now, there has been a lot of talk this week about what's called the D'Hondt system. So for people that don't know, very simply, the D'Hondt system, it's a system that was put in place. It was I suppose, invented by this Belgian mathematician. He described a methodology in 1878, nearly 150 years ago now really, of electing people and basically having councils or governments run in a certain way. And what it does, it's supposed to get rid of what's called the pact system. And the pact system is where you have one party or two parties dominating the council or the government, whatever the case may be, and the others are effectively excluded. So the dominant party parties would basically select who's going to be in the head of the different committees and stuff like that. And you effectively run the government and set the budget and all that sort of stuff. So the Hunt system is trying to get away from that. It's a methodology where different parties would work together and everybody would get a slice of the cake. So it looks like the negotiations for this Hunt system have broken down. So joining me on the line now is Labour Party councillor from Lismore, John Pratt. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Damien.
How are you this morning, John?
I'm good this morning.
John, are you going to be the next mayor of Waterford?
Well, look, Damien, I suppose the decision hasn't fully been made at this stage. We are still in negotiations between ourselves, but the decision of who will be mayor is still ongoing and will be decided. And won't be decided today until during the meeting at 8 o'clock. That's where we're at the moment.
How has the negotiations been with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? What did you offer them this week?
Well, look, to be honest with you, we have done everything in our power from the very start of this process to try and make this an all-inclusive Hunt process. We, from the very outset, tried to bring them along with us and hope that they would join into the process. The numbers this time round were very different. They were very evenly balanced. Organised yourself, you had 17 Gael, 7 Fianna Fáil, you had 6 independent, 6 Sinn Féin, and ourselves and the Greens decided we would work together as a group. We'll have our differences within that group, but we felt if we came together as a 6 to work together, and we tried everything in our power to ensure that we would have a Hunt style, a new approach, and that everyone would work together, and but they unfortunately haven't agreed today to that process. And
the Hunt system, just to remind people, is one that would allow everybody a certain slice of the cake.
Yeah, very much so. And it also allows everyone, to work together, which is important. Nobody is ruling the roast, and getting away from the PAC system is what we've been trying to do. Getting away from the PAC system, we felt that this time round the voters voted very differently here in Waterford, and it gave an opportunity, a real opportunity for that to happen. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be. And we're still, it's open from the fact that we still would want to work together and try and ensure that we have a different council this time round.
How does it make you feel personally that it hasn't happened?
It's very disappointed, actually, And I mean, to be fair, we as Labour Party from the very outset, and we had our first meeting, I can't even feature a few days, there's been a lot of talking done, I can tell you, but we've had our first meeting, and it was even obvious to us, it was our first kind of line of thought. It wasn't thought on us by anybody else. I suppose everybody felt it was going to be the same old, because the numbers would have suggested that Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and Labour could come together and, I suppose, whatever they want to call it, your pact for voting and that. But we knew from the outset that there was a possibility of doing something different here. So we met as our own group. We came along after that and we just asked the Greens to meet, to talk, I suppose, really. We teased out a few differences and they were, more than open to what we were suggesting. And I know that the other groups then, obviously, as well, had the same, I'm talking about independents and Sinn Féin, had the same feelings. And genuinely, we really thought this was a possibility. But, I mean, I know I've been talking personally to many people over the past week or more, from both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. There have been emails sent. There have been, we put our hand out and we really done what we could, I feel, to invite them in and say, look, please, let's do this together. And it's disappointing.
And was it because of old style politics or personalities, or we're going to be talking to different people now about this? Damien Geoghegan has been quite critical of the way this has been handled. Where does this come from? Why weren't you able to make it happen?
Look, you can call it probably is old style politics, let's be fair about it. And I mean, let's be honest as well, I worked very well. I was part of the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Labour the last time, and we did work very well together. And even though I was on my own, we had numerous arguments behind doors as well on issues that were close to my heart. You know, I never felt that I couldn't say what I had to say. But I just don't understand why any party should have the God-given right to think that they have to be or should be the ones leading. You know, and that's what we were trying to do. That why should any one party have that right, especially when the numbers came as they came this particular time round? You know, it was just a goal, and not just an opportunity for Waterford, but I think it was an opportunity to send out a message throughout the country that, you know, this is possible, and it there's an onus on us now to go along and make this work and ensure that, you know, that we have a very good working council. And
will you be able to keep all the independents on side and all the Greens and all the Sinn Féin lads?
Look, I don't know if the word on side the right way to go about it. We've had great conversations, and I tell you, we've had tough conversations over the last few nights, especially. Even up to that last night, you know, there's been conversations in relation to relationship and that, and all we can say is that it's gone very well for us. Yes, it's been tough, you know what I mean, and we just believe that we can make this work, and you know, we're gonna. It's different. It's different. It's something that even when the process started, it was something that we really were kind of trying to tread along lightly as we went along to know how we can get this to work. And I believed, you know, that we will make it work as a unit.
And if you are elected mayor later on today, congratulations.
If I am, we'll see what happens.
James Tobin, good morning.
Good morning, David.
James Tobin, Fianna Fáil councillor, Lismore electoral area. James, is John Pratt going to be the next mayor of Waterford?
At this point, I haven't a notion of who's going to be the next mayor of Waterford. The meeting is today at 3 o'clock. And all I know is my grouping of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will be putting forward a candidate. And it's up to the people, the 30 stage, to vote for whoever they see.
The signal is quite bad there at the minute, James. You might be able just to move to an area where it might be a little bit better.
I hope it would be better. Is it?
Yeah, it's a bit better. Yeah, we'll have to get your broadband down in the west over there now. I'd say it's one of the things that we could look at in the forthcoming general election, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Who are you going to put forward as your candidate for the mayor, James?
Oh, we haven't decided yet who we're putting forward. We've decided yet. We are in negotiations and we'll be for the candidate.
And
whether that candidate will have the support of the majority of the council or not, we're not sure.
Well, normally Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil would be very good at making sure you have the numbers before you go into something like this. So the indication at this stage, and we were going to have somebody from Sinn Féin on this morning, but they've declined to come on because, as far as I know, things have been sorted between them and Labour and the Independents. So if all goes well from their perspective, they're going to have the mayoralty and they're going to have control of the council for the next 5 years. How does that make you feel?
It doesn't. The fall of it, all I'm that we have a council that will. I believe that in an effort led by the strong Sinn Féin is the biggest party that pack.
James, I'll tell you, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it. I'm afraid the line is very, very bad there. We'll see if we can get back to you later, but we'll talk to you later. So what we understand is that it looks like there has been agreement made between Sinn Féin, between Labour, the Independents and the Greens. And at the minute, it looks like they will have the majority on the council and there will be a mayor elected from within that group. My understanding is that it could well be John Pratt. And then we're obviously going to have, if that does happen, now things can change in the next few hours, so we'll just have to wait and see how it goes from there. Now we've two tickets to give away. Two tickets to give away to Sarah Outen. She is at the... OK, we'll just see if we can get John Pratt back on the line there now. Is that it? Hold on a second. No. 2 tickets to give to Sarah Outen this year's Imrama Festival of Travel Writing. All we want to do, the tickets are €25 each. All we want to do is, if you just text in, where is the Imrama Festival of Travel Writing taking place? Where is the Imrama Festival of Travel Writing taking place? And you can call us, text us in 083 33 975. Now, is Trump religious? And do his views on minorities make him anti-religious? All this coming up.
It's a whole new conversation. Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
With thanks to Mulligan's Pharmacy. Over 60 years together. Thanks to you.
Hey, now, what you gonna do about me?
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's Pharmacy near you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. We're going to get James Tobin back on the line later to talk. There's a number of issues he wants to take up regarding John Pratt. Again, text in if you want to win those Sarah Outen tickets, 083 33 975, or you can ring Audrey on 051 846 123. Also, if you lost that money up around the Clayby area, please give us a call there on that. We also want to give a mention to the counting down to the guaranteed €130 million Millions mega draw jackpot tonight. We've got €250 from the National Lottery to give away. Keep an eye on our Facebook page for a chance to share the dream and win this Friday. So €250 from the Euro Millions mega draw jackpot, I suppose, extravaganza, and we're giving away that on our Facebook page. So check out that on our WLR Facebook page. Dean, would you like to win a few bob?
Who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't?
A payoff for the roof of the cathedral.
That's an expensive thing, that old roof of the cathedral.
It is. I suppose the whole thing would be, what, 300,000-400,000. And we got so much for insurance, but we're adding 219,000 to it ourselves.
Wow.
So, but I mean, it'll be there for another couple of 100 years. It'll see us down. So in September, we're going to have Buy a Slate campaign, and I'll be back. Trust me.
Dean Maria Jansen, Church of Ireland, Dean of Waterford. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
You wrote a wee piece in the Irish Times about your recent trip to Berlin, the Holocaust Education Trust of Ireland, and issue of scapegoating minorities. It was kind of topical the week that's in it, with a certain Mr. Donald Trump coming to Ireland. What's your views about Donald Trump?
He worries me. He scares me. I said, no, I can't say that I would have been delighted at his election, to be honest with you. I said right at the very beginning of his presidency, give him time. Maybe he will come up with some goods that will be sensible, because people behave one way when they're electioneering. And I thought when he would go into the post that he would grow up and deal with stuff properly. He scares me. His attitude to women appalls me. I think the abiding image I have of his presidency is of a little child, a Mexican child in a detention centre, at the legs of a soldier looking up, crying, and nobody's responding. And only this week reading that these children in these detention centres are being denied further education and recreation. So that whole treatment of the wall issue is one thing, but the outplay of it and how it's affecting totally nameless thousands of people scares me. I don't like his attitude to women. I don't like his attitude. I don't like the way he deals with people negatively all the time, and it distresses me. That's being honest.
And we've had some people on this morning. You've heard some views about people during the week. We've talked to independent candidate Lee Walsh this week, saying that there is a minority of people in Ireland, the minority of people in America, obviously, in terms of the core support for Trump. The majority, he got elected. Mm-hmm. So you were writing this week about the scapegoating of minorities and how, Donald Trump would claim to be a very religious person.
Well, that could be open to question. I think if you're a religious person, it should open your mind and heart to other people. If you're genuinely religious, of whatever religious faith, you're interested in making connections. You're not interested in defining yourself by what you're not, but rather by defining yourself with whom you reach out in fellowship.
So the way we treat minorities, you believe, is inherently a spiritual question as well as a political question?
For me, I was writing as a priest in that article. And I suppose I would be very wary of a religion that espouses a populism that can be attractive to some, that uses religious cliche and uses God as a means of hurting others. I don't think that has anything to do with Christ. And all religions have bad histories. All religions have wreaked havoc in communities and countries, without exception. There isn't one religious sect or institution that is without blame. But the core of religion, like the core of democracy, is about the common good, and it's about decency and honourable living and care and mutual responsibility. And when you start using God as your weapon of war, then you can do anything.
But haven't religions over the centuries all used war and used God and used war to justify their God? Yes. And for example, we've heard things that Donald Trump would talk about the evil that exists in the world, and things that he is doing is to try and stop evil and to try and stop badness in the world. So he's bringing a spirituality into his politics to justify the politics. And this may involve building the wall. So he's saying, so he's making the connection between drugs. He says drugs are bad. A lot of drugs are coming in from Mexico. We're going to build a wall, and this is going to stop the evil.
All of that is such a stupid argument that he's using. The essential issue is we have almost a parasitical globalisation whereby people are deprived local access to employment and become migrant. It's an economic issue. And globalised economy means you move to where cheapest labour is. So if all the multinationals pulled out of Ireland, all the Irish young would go. They've always gone. Irish people have always gone where work was. Always.
Labour follows capital.
Labour follows capital. So our nation is built on a culture of labour following capital. And yet at the same time, when other people are forced to so do by economic privation, by war, by famine, by destitution, or by ambition, it's not okay for them to do it. But it was okay for us Irish to do it.
How do you feel about the growth of right-wing ideology as it's espoused by the likes of Trump and some of his supporters around the world?
It worries me deeply. It doesn't work economically. I mean, it's quite interesting. In Denmark this week, they had a rise of the far right and they've rejected it politically because they see it doesn't work. It doesn't actually add anything to the common good or to the economy. It does create a populist soundbite, rallying, keyboard warriors, Facebook stuff. It does have that certain cachet with people. But with regard to the cold-nosed furtherance of the common good in society, of employment, health, education, safety and social cohesion, it doesn't do that.
And what about, again, earlier in the week we had a man on saying that the economy is going brilliant in America, so Trump's policies economically are working.
Well, other people would argue that it took years to get to that point and he wasn't there when that was being created.
That was argued, absolutely, yes. Is it going to get worse? Or what needs to be done? If you're listening to this now and you're a, inverted commas, liberal, worried about Donald Trump or worried about right-wing ideology, and you're seeing this on the newspapers, you're seeing it abroad, you're seeing this rise of the right, you're seeing a vote in Ireland as well, the likes of, for example, Peter Casey vote, and a sizable chunk of the population being, I suppose, agreeing with some of the views. What do you do about it? Like, is this a case of arguing at a dinner table?
No.
Or is it a case of actually doing something about it? Like, if it was a case of doing something about it, the protests against Donald Trump were very small.
Very, very small. I think in Ireland, the far right has never had a foothold. We haven't had a fascist element in Ireland. It has always been a profoundly conservative society.
Yeah, there was inklings of in the 1930s and the late 20s, yeah, but...
and there has, you know, in any society you will have a fascist element. They are there. What I would say to people who are deeply concerned about this is, let's just start at the schools. All our schools are multinational. All our schools are multi-faith. So small children are growing up in classrooms with many different races and religions. And at the very base level of how children are educated to coexist with difference is being done well in schools, in primary schools, very much so. So at an educational level, I'm not worried, because children do find themselves in diverse groupings and are learning to live and work with each other from step go, and that's really good. In most workplaces now, you will find increasing efforts at what I would call ethical leadership to ensure dignity in the workplace, that nobody is discriminated on grounds of race, ethnicity, sex or religion, and that's enforced in workplaces. I think that the Grace O'Sullivan election,
Yes.
what I noticed in the parish and around the place, people were delighted, because they like her and she's an honourable woman. But it got people thinking, maybe I should get involved in politics. And I think, yes, we're tired of spin and cliché. And the public domain is where action is taken that decides society. Support a political party financially. Get involved in a political party. Get involved in your union. Get involved in your local housing estate association. Get involved.
So get off the keyboards and go out and do something.
Do something.
Now, we don't have time to get into the whole issue regarding religion in schools and how you talk. That's another week's work, absolutely. It is going to be very interesting to see what happens the next 12 months, next 2 years in Ireland and elsewhere, because in a way we're at a knife edge in some respects.
No, I'm not worried about Ireland, ironically. I'm not worried about Ireland because I trust the savvy of the Irish people to see bunkum when they get it. We're tired of spin and we're essentially a cynical nation. So somebody comes...
We're also not... we can be brought in by the European if there's growth of a right-wing party in Italy and they get populism and they get success economically, there will be a certain percentage of the population here will say that's the way we should be going.
I think because there has always been a root of fascism from Mussolini on. And Italy is a very different society to Ireland, even though the Irish are called the Italians of the North. I think we're a different society. I think there's a stronger there's a community base. And for the most part, I think the vast majority of people, I've been working in the people world for 44 years, from Finglas to here. All classes, all religions, all groups. And 99% of people just want to live a decent life by them, have enough money to live by, look after their families, get on with their neighbours, have a job that they can deal with and get on with it. I think that's the key thing. And when people come in with views that your life is dysfunctional because of a Muslim living up the road, I think most people have enough wit to see that that's a silly argument.
Dean, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
We'll have you again in later in the summer and we'll talk about the slates on the roof.
Absolutely.
We'll let you head off there because I'm going to talk now to Councillor James Tobin. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Damien.
You're on a better line there now. James, tell us, you had some issues you wanted to take up with John Pratt there. He was talking about how Fianna Fáil have dealt with these negotiations in the last week.
Yes, Fianna Fáil haven't been in the negotiations with it all, because from the word go, Fianna Fáil made a decision. They're not interested in the Hunt system because the Hunt system is only interested in getting positions of monetary value. Not one word about how you run a council, how you pass budgets or anything. And it's my belief now that there's a new pact formed in this council, headed by the biggest party, of course, which is Sinn Féin is the biggest party of this new pact. Sinn Féin 6, Labour 4. I don't know whether all the independents are in or not. We'll know that today. And I think there's 2 Greens someplace. So Sinn Féin are leading a new pact. And the Hunt system, we were offered only the Hunt system. And we are not interested in just something that is only interested in positions and in power.
So are you basically, is it that you don't want to work with Sinn Féin?
We're not saying that. We're not interested in the hunt system and this pact that has been formed. We believe now it has been formed. And, of course, it will be led by Sinn Féin. And this pact, I have been in the council for 20 years. And there are people now in this pact who have never voted for a budget in Waterford. Now all of a sudden, they were interested in joining the hunt to become, they wanted to become mayors. I have no interest in mayors. I'm interested in the financial running of this county for the betterment of the ratepayers and taxpayers. And also, I will defend the people of my parish against wind farms. Those are the things I'm interested in.
Yeah,
the hunt system.
But you're also interested. Fianna Fáil have always been interested in being in power, and you're, I'd say, a bit annoyed now that you're not going to be in power for the next 5 years in Waterford.
I was in a council. I was in the first council in Waterford, the county council, and we weren't in power at all. But we never. I'll tell you one thing, Damien. When we were in power, we never reneged on our responsibilities, and we always voted to bring in a budget and to balance a budget in Waterford County Council. And as I say to you, some of the people in the pact, we couldn't go into a pact with them because when it came to budgetary matters, they weren't there to be seen even. And I hope for the good of this county and the county council and the people that elected us, that when the budget, if this pact succeeds, led by Sinn Féin, that when the budget comes in, I hope they'll do the right thing by the people of Waterford.
Councillor James Tobin, Fianna Fáil councillor from Lismore, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We'll wait and see what happens at 3 o'clock this afternoon at City Hall. Our news team will be there to give you the latest on that throughout the afternoon. Coming up, do you agree with American troops flying over Irish airspace? Thousands upon thousands of American troops. And also, would you eat horse meat?
Join the WLR conversation on Twitter using hashtag Déise Today.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. We are joined on the line by Pat Leahy, political editor of the Irish Times. Good morning, Pat.
Morning, Damien.
Pat, thanks very much for joining us. I know your time is precious, so really appreciate you coming on. Pat, there's some very interesting figures in the Irish Times regarding the number of foreign troops, the majority being from the United States, who are passing through Ireland or its airspace in civilian aircraft. It's almost doubled between 2014 and last year. Can you fill us in, please, about the figures here on this?
Yeah, well, some work that we've done on the numbers of troops and the number of planes passing either through Irish airports or over Irish airspace. And all of these, the reason that we have access to these figures, I suppose, is that all of these must be given permission by the Irish government to pass through airports or airspace. And if you look over the last number of years, say since 2014, you see that the global figure, if you like, is more than 750,000 foreign troops, and the vast majority of those are from the US, have been given permission by the government to pass through Irish airports or airspace since that time. If you look at the breakdown by years, you'll see that the number last year had almost doubled since 2014. Now, the numbers do tend to come and go. If you look over a longer period of time, you will have seen that there was a big spike in troop movements during and prior to the war in Iraq. And we've seen something of a repeat of that recently.
And I know we used to have a lot of protests about these matters down at Shannon Airport. Like you saw the protests this week, Pat, they were very limited down there, and I suppose relatively limited protests in Dublin. Do you think the Irish population in general has kind of accepted this, or how do you think the mood is regarding these type of matters?
Well, I think, Damien, that there's obviously some people, and not an insignificant number of people, are quite opposed to the use of Irish airports, usually Shannon, by either American military planes or planes that are actually classed as civilian planes but have been chartered by the US military and are used for troop movements. Clearly, there's ongoing protests in Shannon. You see it raised in the Dáil periodically by people like Claire Daly and Mick Wallace. But on the other hand, I suppose it is the settled policy of Irish governments that while they maintain their definition of Irish neutrality, they effectively facilitate the US government to move its troops and military equipment through Irish airports and airspace. And, your question is, are people okay with that? I suppose you'd have to look at it, has it ever become a big issue in a general election?
Yeah, true.
Not that I can recall. Governments of different makeups, different stripes, all continued with that policy. So if you go from a Fianna Fáil PD coalition back in the early 2000s, they continued it. Fianna Fáil Green coalition, they continued it. Fine Gael Labour coalition, they continued it. And now a Fine Gael and Independent coalition, and they've continued it. So I suppose there's something of an acquiescence amongst the country at large about it, even if it annoys and concerns a not insignificant number of people. Yeah.
And finally, Pat, and briefly, if you don't mind, what's your view about a general election before Christmas? Yes or no?
Oh, good Lord. I think the general, and I'll be brief, I think the general consensus is that the general consensus around Leinster House seems to be that one is likely in September. I don't think that's possible because I think we will be staring down the barrel of Brexit in September with the UK's leaving date set in October. So I don't think it can be September. I think if Brexit is settled or suspended in October, then I think it could happen in November. But I'm now increasingly of the view that it's more likely to be next year.
Pat Leahy, political editor of the Irish Times, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. Now, some texts. Why did Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael go in with Sinn Féin last year in the city regarding the pact? Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are interested in power, says Milo. Damien, what's all this talk about pacts? That's politics, and government in Ireland is a pact like most governments in Europe. And Damien, I would eat horse meat as part of a stable diet. Stay with us and get a taste for this debate.
WhatsApp Damien now on 083 3333 975. Déise today on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. Make life easy. Pull into Ireland's only drive-through pharmacy at Mulligan's Arkeen.
I made no promises. I can't do golden rings, but I'll give you everything.
Déise today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. I'm going to be joined on the line by Phelim O'Neill with the Irish Farmers Journal in a second. Firstly, a text in from John Cummins, Councillor John Cummins of Fine Gael. He says the new pact of Sinn Féin, Labour, the Greens and Independents has been solely interested in positions of monetary value throughout the last 2 weeks. There is no commitment amongst their pact to pass budgets and make difficult policy decisions at this critical juncture in Waterford's history. The greatest difficulty in forming a pact or agreement is committing to passing 5 budgets, regardless of the financial position of the council, i.e. if the council is down €1 or €2 million due to circumstances outside of the council's control, the pact will be committed to making difficult decisions to pass a budget. This has not been agreed amongst Sinn Féin, Labour, Greens and Independents, which could prove catastrophic for Waterford come budget time. Taking positions without responsibility is irresponsible in the extreme. That from Councillor John Cummins. Now, Phelim O'Neill. Good morning, Phelim.
Good morning, Damien.
Phelim, we won't ask you about the pact at Waterford Council, will we?
No, it could be a bit beyond me now.
Listen, you're a global market specialist with the Irish Farmers Journal. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. There's a story which has broken in the last, 24 hours, but it's part of an ongoing major investigation into horse meat being unfit for human consumption, entering the international food chain. Tell us about this story.
I suppose horse meat's very much in our minds, and probably goes back to the issue in 2013, whenever fraudulently horse meat would have turned up in product that was supposed to be beef, particularly in burgers and pies, etc. Major story at the time in 2013. This one is actually quite different because, you know, when we think about it, look, farmers, people don't produce horses as a means of meat, of protein. But whenever horses have finished their breeding cycles, whenever they finish racing or jumping or whatever, you know, there is a value in them. And horse meat is particularly popular in mainland Europe. I suppose France and Belgium in particular.
Did you ever try it yourself?
I did, yes. I would cover the Brussels beet for the Farmers Journal, and I've had it. And to be quite honest, if you didn't tell me what it was, I wouldn't really have passed. It would pass off almost. It's like comparing, I suppose, beef and lamb. If you're a connoisseur of food, you'll probably pick up the difference. If you're just looking at it, I suppose, as a refueling experience, you'll eat on and not really pay much heed. But look, the reality of life is Ireland has a small horse meat processing industry. Last year, for example, we had about 6,500 horses were processed and sold mainly on the continent. I'll not say there's no market in Ireland. There's probably the one or two examples. If your listeners maybe will know someone that has experienced it or eaten it or has had some of it here, but it's not a mainstream meat, just the same as veal isn't, in terms of production from cows. But what's happened this time round, and what's different from 2013, this is an issue in the processing of horse meat itself, in terms of the identification. Horses, I suppose, every horse has a passport, which is a very detailed document, giving a descriptor of the animal, giving pictures, any particular marks, etc. And what the Gardaí are investigating in this case is, has there been adulteration or tampering with this identification? Why would that happen? It would be so that horses, and again, in terms of any product entering the food chain, there's very strict regulations in terms of withdrawal period and medicines. There's some medicines, for example, phenylbutazone, or better known as bute, that's used for the treatment of injuries, particularly inflammatory injuries. It's not used for humans. And if it's used in an animal, then that animal cannot enter the food chain. Now, horses, by the very nature of what they're involved in terms of jumping, running, racing, they will pick up perhaps more of these sort of inflammatory type injuries than cattle would, for example. And vets, in terms of giving the animal welfare the priority, vets will use that on occasion. If that is done, that animal can never enter the food chain. It's recorded as part of its medical record and its passport. And what Gardaí are investigating is, has there been horses that have had their identity tampered with and have been presented for the food chain when in fact they shouldn't have been? That is the basis of this story, and it's very much part of an ongoing criminal investigation, and something that is, I suppose, quite different from the story of 2013, which was really basically about fraud as opposed to actual putting animals into the food chain that shouldn't be in the food chain. Yeah,
because we've had raids, like the Guards have had raids on several farms in several counties, including Kilkenny, Roscommon, Leitrim, Sligo and Westmeath. So if the Gardaí go into a particular farm, what are they looking for? Are they looking for documentation? Are they looking for horses themselves with passports? What would they be looking for?
Yeah, no, what they will be looking for, I suppose, is falsification of records and the means to falsify records. Now, again, in addition to the passport, there's a microchipping process. And again, we understand that the Gardaí have become aware of the existence of microchips that could be, I suppose, used as an alternative to the legitimate one that is issued in the original and proper registration process of the animal. So the manoeuvre, if you like, or the fraudulent or criminal manoeuvre, in fact, would be the case of trying to import and bring in alternative microchips to give the animal a different identity that probably masks the treatment that it's had in terms of the drugs that's been administered to it during its life, and perhaps presenting and going forward to the food chain when in fact it shouldn't. That's what the Gardaí would be out, and they're in the middle of the investigation now. Obviously it's a fairly wide-ranging one. It's one that's been ongoing for some time, and the fact that there's a serious Gardaí team on it, I think it reflects the fact that, I suppose, anything to do with the Irish food industry, and whilst the horse meat processing industry, 6,500 processing last year. We processed 1.8 million cattle. It's a negligible amount, but in terms of international reputation, Ireland would have very much a zero tolerance policy when it comes to anything that might impact negatively on the sector. And I suppose this is why the Gardaí have went into this, and the other state authorities, the Food Safety Authority, etc., are very much all part of that.
Absolutely. Phelim O'Neill, thanks very much for talking to us this morning. We will talk again about this at some stage in the future. You listen to Phelim O'Neill, Global Market Specialist with the Irish Farmers Journal. On the Hunt system, texter has texted in, if the Hunt system is taken on by the majority, does Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael not get a go at the mayor anyway? Sounds to me that they're more worried that if they won't chair the committees, and that's where the extra money is. John Cummins of Co have ran the council for long enough. It's time for some change. From what I understand, if the Hunt system was to work properly, there would have been a possibility of a Fianna Fáil and a Fine Gael mayor at some stage during the 5 years. So we'll find out more about that later on today. Stay with us, especially if you're in the Defence Forces. We want to hear from you. We're hoping to have the Minister for Defence on the line just after 11 o'clock. Talking about the festivals, the saving of festivals. You might remember there was a big issue in the last month about civil defence and other groups not having proper insurance to cover festivals, and a big possibility festivals were going to be cancelled. So stay with us for that and a lot more. The issue of addiction and cocaine use.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Paul Kehoe, good morning.
Good morning, Damien.
I said I'd give South Wexford a mention there at the Owl Weather. I know we've got some listeners in South Wexford. You don't forget South Wexford when you're going for election, don't you not?
The real part of the sunny southeast.
Oh, listen, thanks very much for joining us. Minister for Defence, Minister for a state with responsibility for defence, Paul Kehoe. A deal has been hammered out, Minister, that's likely to mean a reprieve for hundreds of festivals that were faced with having to cancel this summer. Now, you sought an extension from regulators under new licensing arrangements for civil defence personnel. Can you tell us what the latest is, please, Minister?
Well, my Department of Defence have formally asked the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council for an extension further to the extension that is in place at the moment of the 31st of July because there is a huge amount of communities and festivals out there that are totally dependent on civil defence volunteer members to assist in medical care at these festivals and community events. This goes back, Damien, to the last number, maybe 3 months ago, where the Emergency Care Council, as they are known as, where they licensed the provision of care and operations for volunteer organisations like the civil defence. My department set the policy for the civil defence volunteer members, and the local authorities, the county councils right across the country, manage the operations. Also, my department provides funding and training for that.
Signal is fairly bad there. Can you hear us there again, Minister? Are you still there? OK, the Minister is just gone. We'll try and get the Minister back on the line there in a second. Jennifer is trying him there again now. That's the problem with mobile phones, and I suppose we're talking about broadband coverage in different parts of Wexford and different parts of West Waterford. Very interesting text coming in regarding the issue of the Hunt system that we were talking about there a few minutes ago, and the text from Councillor John Cummins. A texter has said, in relation to John Cummins' text, how can he possibly know what was discussed during our negotiations, as he hadn't the interest in even engaging in the process? For the record, budgetary and other matters were discussed and agreed. I'm the one who actually introduced these matters into the negotiations. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were offered to come into the Hunt system, and they declined. And that is from Declan Clune. They refused, he says. That's from Declan Clune. John Cummins is being totally incorrect in his text, said this other person. This was the Fine Gael position in the Hunt system. Fine Gael has said that it's entering into power sharing, but Sinn Féin is not allowed. Fianna Fáil similarly could have agreed to the Hunt system, but have chosen not to. That from another texter. Another texter said Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael think they have the God-given right to run the council. Then they spin the idea that they put the city top of the agenda at the first meeting and then deal with secondary issues later. Now let's see. We're trying to get Paul Kehoe back on the line. We'll take a quick break and back to you in a second.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. Join Mulligan's Blue Club today and get points every time you shop in-store or online at mulliganspharmacy.com.
I'll be riding shotgun underneath the hot sun, feeling like a someone.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. Minister Paul Kehoe, you're on the line there now?
Yes, sorry, Damien, you can blame the Kilkenny signal for on the way to Stephen's Barracks in Kilkenny for the step-down plate of Major General Kieran Brennan, so you can blame the phone signal in Kilkenny.
Can we not blame the government, no?
No, you can't blame the government, not on this occasion.
Listen, we heard most of what you had to say there. Basically, you're saying that these festivals are saved for the time being. It'll allow festivals that rely on civil defence members to provide first aid to go ahead. What's going to happen next, though? What's going to happen ongoing? What are we looking at for a proper resolution for this issue?
Well, Damien, what is happening at the moment is my own department and civil authorities, the local council, local authorities are in talks with the pre-hospital emergency care council that have been for quite some time. This is a very complex situation because you are dealing with the licensing of and the provision of care of people and the transferring of patients that are maybe emergency transfers from a festival maybe to a hospital or to an acute hospital. So it is a very complex area. You're dealing with people's lives. So we are in negotiations with the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council along with the local authorities, the city and county managers to resolve this issue. But I am hopeful that this will be resolved in the long run. But what I am wanting to say to communities and to festival organisers this morning is that we have taken their issues on board and that we have looked for and pretty sure positive that we will get an extension of the deadline that is there already. OK, and I know you're under pressure to go, so I won't. Just one last question. You're heading up, as you say, to Stephen's Barracks. How's your relationship now with the Defence Forces after the criticisms over the last week regarding, I suppose, issues of morale and stuff within the Defence Forces? Are you dealing with them? Absolutely, Damien. There'd be something wrong if everybody was praising the Minister every day. That's what politics is all about. You have to be able to take the criticisms along with the praise. And we will have, this is in the recruitment and retention of members of the Defence Force. Hopefully next week or definitely the week after, we will have the report of the Independent Pay Commission. This is an independent commission set up by government. When I asked Minister Paschal Donoghue to do this, he did so. He prioritised the Department of Defence as an area and members of the Defence Forces as an area that need prioritisation. So this is an independent, has nothing to do with government, that they looked at the pay and conditions, especially and recruitment and retention. They cannot touch core pay, but they can look at allowances and other areas. So that report will be published. I have a copy of the report, but it's confidentiality at the moment. Minister Donoghue, the Minister for Public Expenditure, Reform and Finance, will be bringing this report to government shortly, and it will be published. What I want to be able to do is to address some of the issues and challenges that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, along with Department of Defence and Defence Force Management. Okay. Minister for Responsibility for Defence, Paul Kehoe, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very much appreciated. Now, we are joined on the line by Willie Collins. Good morning, Willie.
Morning, Vivian.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Willie, you're an addiction counsellor in a private practice in Waterford City now, previously director of Ashiree Addiction Treatment Centres. A lot of people would know you around the southeast.
Yes.
Now, there's a new report out that reveals that cocaine use is on the rise among young people in Ireland, trafficking on social media, dark net markets, and I think call centres where dealers deliver quickly when people order online.
Yes.
This is serious stuff, isn't it?
It is indeed. I suppose the worrying thing is that cocaine is becoming more socially acceptable, among people to acknowledge that they're using it. And I suppose, people one time would be quite ashamed to say that they were using, but now it seems to be fairly run of the mill. The people say they drink, they smoke, and they use a bit of coke, which is more worrying that it's becoming an acceptable thing in society. And I suppose we have to look at it in two ways. We have to look at it in supply reduction and demand reduction. And I suppose the area that as a society we can focus on is demand reduction and start to look at what's actually going on with young people that they're resorting to cocaine at such a level,
And tell me, Willie, like this idea of ordering online, do you think there may be a possibility then that Gardaí will be able to track it easier if they are able to break into computer systems and things like that? Or is this another level of, I suppose, difficulty that the authorities are going to have?
Well, I think if there's a demand there will be a supply there. People will always find ways around the supply routes. But if we can, as a society, we can respond more generally in relation to sort of demand reduction and helping young people to move away from it. And one of the things is that we have to talk about this as an unacceptable behaviour and very much among middle class or well educated. Some people are using quite liberally.
Okay, Willie. Listen, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That is Willie. And straight after the news, you are going to listen to Martin Keneally, who's talking about a major issue regarding insurance and such matters.
Join the WLR conversation on Twitter using hashtag Déise Today.
With thanks to mulliganspharmacy.com.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Now, welcome back to the programme. Sorry I had to cut Willie off there. We actually had a fire alarm, but it's actually a false fire alarm. So that's why I had to... the fire drill, as Wayne was saying, the content was so hot, it set off the alarm. Fair play to you, Wayne. Now, Geraldine texted me earlier in the week to say, do people know if the GAA give credit for season ticket holders when they attend matches? Herself and her nephew are season ticket holders, and they were at the Waterford Tip game a few weeks ago. The tickets were scanned, but the GAA came back to her saying there was no evidence of the tickets having been scanned. Does anybody have experience of the same? A special mention to Brian McCormick, currently 8th in the Isle of Man senior TT race. Brian is from Tramore, people would know him. He's a renowned and excellent motorcyclist. I want to wish him the very best and safety, because obviously there's been a death earlier in the week there at the senior TT Isle of Man race, and regular deaths on those roads. So keep it safe, Brian, and the very, very best of luck to you. The Imrama Festival winners. The winner we have Eleanor Barry from Beach Grove, Lismore. Eleanor Barry from Beach Grove, Lismore. And as you know, the Imrama Festival is in Lismore. That is exactly where it is at. Now, I think we may have tickets as well for Betty Moore from Dungarvan as well, possibly. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure exactly on that. A little bit of confusion there on that. Now, personal injury awards here are higher on average than in Britain. Not because people are being overcompensated, but because, wait for it, Irish accidents are more severe. That's according to a report by an economist from University College Cork. The report by Senior Lecturer in Economics Martin Keneally was commissioned by the Law Society and the Bar Council. Martin joins me on the line now. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Damien.
Martin, an interesting report this week regarding a new dimension to Ireland's High Personal Injury Awards. Can you tell us about it, please?
I can. Traditionally, we rely on the police to tell us what the overall motor accident rate in Ireland is. And the breakdown of that rate has between minor, moderate and severe accidents. And the same happens in the UK. But when you switch from police-reported to hospital admission data that are clinically assessed on a comparable basis, applying a uniform scale, it turns out that a much higher percentage of accidents in Ireland are serious, and a lower percentage of accidents in Britain are serious. I probably should just mention in passing as well that the police data just picks up an estimated 28 or 29% of all accidents. So what I did was that I had a look at the higher percentage of moderate and serious accidents in Ireland and factored in the cost of those accidents. And when you do that, it accounts for most of the difference between personal injury awards in Ireland and personal injury awards in the UK.
Let's try and tease this out, Martin. Are you saying like personal injury awards in Ireland are higher on average than in Britain, not because people are being overcompensated, but because the accidents are more severe?
Correct. The injury awards in Ireland are about 50-55% higher than they are in the UK.
And how can the accidents be more severe here? Like, are we?
Well, if you look at a category of accident again above which there is no dispute whatsoever, fatalities. You can't take a fatality, and the fatality figures for Ireland per million cars registered are about 55% higher than in the UK.
Okay, and what about whiplash injuries and matters such as that?
Whiplash, I kind of avoided whiplash because it's defined differently in different countries. The Personal Injuries Committee report openly acknowledges that the definition of whiplash varies as between one company and another in Ireland. It varies between Ireland and the UK, and it varies over time in the UK. And I think there's probably a systematic source of bias in looking at whiplash in both countries, because in the UK definition of whiplash has to be the significant injury. So most claims involve 2 or 3 different injuries being listed. And for it to qualify as a whiplash claim in the UK, whiplash has to be the most severe of the injuries reported. In Ireland, when data was collected for the Personal Injuries Committee, as best I can tell, the whiplash awards that we're looking at, any award that had a whiplash in it, qualified. So to make it a little bit clearer, supposing you consider somebody who's got a severe back injury and a touch of whiplash, whatever, in the neck. In Britain, that would be called a back injury because the dominant injury is a severe back injury. In Ireland, it could be classified as whiplash.
Yes.
So I kind of suspect that much of the differences between what I find and what are in the Personal Injury Committee report is because I'm looking at personal injuries award, and I'm not applying whiplash in the way that the Personal Injuries Committee report does, because I think we're not comparing like with like.
Now,
being called whiplash for the UK differs from what we're calling whiplash in Ireland.
Yeah. Now, the report that you did was commissioned by the Law Society and the Bar Council. And what would you have to say to, for example, Insurance Ireland, who said the commissioning of the report was an attempt to undermine the work of the Personal Injuries Commission and should be seen as foot-dragging?
No, I think that's just completely wrong. I look at what I've done as expanding and qualifying what was in the Personal Injuries Committee report.
Very good.
Note that, the report says there's awards are higher in Ireland, dispute just how much higher, but it doesn't actually tell you why. The preface to the report by Mr. Justice Kearns says that he's not going to look at why the awards are higher. What I've done is to say, look, awards tend to be higher when injuries are more severe. Let's have a look at clinically assessed data on the severity of accidents in both jurisdictions and see how much of that, what that accounts for. And as best I can figure it out, it accounts for most of the difference between the Irish and differentials.
And do you think there's going to be massive changes in the law regarding insurance over the next 12 months? There's been a lot of stuff in the media the last few weeks and months about this. Do you think we're looking at changes?
I think we are, but I think what we should really be looking at is, I tracked this in my report, that when the number of claims, when accident risk is reduced, accident costs are reduced to the insurance companies and the premiums fall as well. And we seem to have lost sight of the contribution that accident risk and cutting down on accident risk. So we have a pretty good track record. The RSA will tell you that fatality rates have fallen and so on. And so they have. But they've been lower to begin with in the United Kingdom, and they've also fallen in the United Kingdom. So if we're comparing ourselves to the UK, we have to try and record boat safety. And you know that there's been some fairly serious fatalities in Limerick and a little bit earlier up in Donegal. And, I think what the government should do is focus on getting the accident rate down, particularly for serious injuries, which are very expensive, and obviously for fatalities as well.
Martin Keneally, Senior Lecturer in Economics at UCC, thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay, thank you, Damien.
Déise Today with Damien Tiernan on WLR.
Thanks to Mulligan's. With 17 stores across the southeast, there's a Mulligan's pharmacy near you.
Now keep your texts and your comments coming in. You heard earlier on we had Thomas Byrne on. He found an amount of money in an envelope and the Clayboy car park outside the Londis. The good news is we have found the owner. She is a woman. We're not going to give her name out, and she is delighted and says thank you so much. And we've made contact with her and Thomas. We verified the name and the amount of money that was inside, and it's great news. So well done, Thomas, and again fair play to you. Another great thing of public service, really. Lovely the fact that you've done it, and lovely the fact that we've been able to reunite the money with the owner. Keep your texts coming in. Somebody has texted regarding the council. Can't believe the council, people going tit for tat on the show all morning. How will they agree to anything by 3 o'clock? I can see why people don't vote. Others have been talking about the airspace. Damien, in World War II, the US airspace violated neutral Irish airspace by overflying 24,000 plus times. There was nothing Ireland could do but protest, which would have been hypocritical, since Dev gave the British permission to use different aspects regarding around the north of Donegal and Sligo and stuff like that. Now, insurance. Do you take out holiday insurance? Do you think it's worth it? Dermot Good, leading Irish health expert. Good morning.
Morning, Damien.
Dermot, thousands of people are taking holidays abroad with no insurance cover whatsoever. You're with totalhealthcover.ie. Tell us about this, please.
Yeah, basically, Damien, look, we normally specialise in the whole area of health insurance, but travel insurance comes up pretty much in every conversation, and it's probably one of the biggest areas of concern and also of complaints over the last 12 months. And really what we're finding is that there are hundreds, possibly thousands of people who are going abroad and who think they have good cover in place, and unfortunately they don't. Some people still go abroad with no travel insurance whatsoever. They also don't take the European health insurance card. And unfortunately for those people, if they fall ill, well, first of all, they think their health insurance is a substitute for travel insurance, which it's not. And they don't realise just how expensive it can be if you fall ill abroad. So I suppose really this is more of a warning to all consumers that, look, as the kids now finish school and people are now, let's just say, planning to go abroad on their holidays, just make sure you have proper travel cover in place.
Okay.
And we focus on the medical side of it rather than the other bits and pieces. So to make sure if you fall ill, you're fully covered. Yeah,
let's break this down into its constituent parts. Do we know what percentage of people that go on foreign holidays actually have health insurance, have travel insurance?
It's hard to gauge exactly. We would estimate that, look, roughly 50 to 60% of people going abroad do take out cover. But there's a problem even with that, Damien. A lot of those people have no idea what they're covered for. They don't check out the policies. Most people think they have more cover than they actually have. They have no idea how to use the cover. Lots of people fall into traps because they've gone abroad for longer than is allowed by the policy. They don't realise there's a policy excess. Or here's one for you, Damien. Right, we get people going abroad who are, let's just say, going to get involved in certain activities. Some of these activities are deemed hazardous and they're not covered by the policies, or they're only covered subject to certain conditions. So if you're going abroad and going mountain biking, or if you're going to go diving but you're going below a certain depth, or if you're taking part in, let's just say, activities like maybe bungee jumping or things like that, you may find that a lot of these policies that you think you're covered for, lots of those activities are specifically excluded by the policy. So the devil is in the fine print.
Yeah, and what about, for example, you go to a water park and you're on one of these slides, and it's this slide that you look down on from a height and you think, God, I wonder, does my policy now cover this? Because if I fall and hit the water at a bad angle and twist my neck, would that be considered a high risk?
No, most of those, because that would be considered, in most cases, an occasional activity. And most people, when they're going to water parks, these are basically, how should I put it, they're not just kind of, they're fully approved, fully authorised, fully compliant water parks that with most of the, let's just say, safety regulations. So there's usually no issue with that. But for example, like, you know, if somebody, we've had cases where people might go on some of these zip lining. So, and what they'll do is they'll sign a disclaimer, and you may be familiar with these. So abroad, they'll ask you to sign a piece of paper, and what you don't realise, you're actually signing away your right to make any claim against the provider of the service for any injuries, and you're also signing a disclaimer to say you cannot make any claim on your travel insurance. So be very careful of what they sometimes ask you to sign before you take part in some of those activities.
Yeah.
But most of those water parks, theme parks, they're all fine. I mean, Damien, what I would say to your listeners here, because travel insurance, I mean, people criticise health insurance for being complex. Travel insurance is on a different scale altogether in terms of complexity, because there's so many constituent parts of the policy. So what we say to people is, look, if you're travelling abroad, you phone your travel insurance company and you simply tell them where you're going, how long you're going for, tell them exactly what you plan on doing, okay, within reason what you're planning to do, and most importantly, get them to explain to you what's covered, what's not covered, and what do you do in the event of a claim. So some of these travel companies, by the way, they have a clause in there that says you must phone them, first of all, from abroad to register the claim before you go into hospital. So if you don't make that phone call, or somebody doesn't phone on your behalf, you may find you have no claim.
Really?
So really,
okay.
You don't want to be reading these policies, you know, whilst you're abroad.
No.
And you're not ill. Just one phone call before you go is all you need to do.
Because most people don't read the fine print. And like you could have also elderly people in particular, they may just say, no, there's no need to do this. And they're at most risk of falling ill, aren't they?
They are. And Damien, let me put this into context here. You'll buy, like, for example, we like the likes of, let's just say, VHI Multitrip. They have a very good travel policy. We like Blue Insurances. We like their policies as well. But there's loads of providers. There's the AA and there's loads of other providers out there. So just make sure you have a good policy. But here's the thing. You pay €50 for the year for an annual policy. That covers you for up to €10 million of medical expenses in most cases. So when you think about it, €50 premium for a 10 million policy, it is going to be riddled with caveats and exclusions. And what people don't realise, the amount of times we come across, so for example, somebody might go abroad specifically to get something done, or they might go abroad against doctor's advice, or, you know, a woman might travel abroad beyond a certain term of pregnancy, or somebody might have an underlying psychiatric condition and they travel abroad. In all those scenarios I've mentioned, you have no cover whatsoever, because that is specifically excluded on most policies. So, you know, we say to people, don't do the Irish thing. And the Irish thing is tell the insurance company nothing. No, for these policies, phone them before you go, disclose everything, tell them everything you plan on doing, and then get them to tell you whether you're covered or not. And sometimes, so we mentioned some of those high-risk activities, sometimes if you pay an extra premium, maybe an extra 20 or 30 euro, then that activity will be covered. But we get people saying, I just didn't bother paying the extra premium. Our advice is pay the extra premium. You cannot have enough cover when you travel abroad. It's bad enough getting sick abroad, but when they present you with bills, like we've seen situations where they will not admit you until you give them a deposit on your credit card of 1,500 to 2,000 euro. And if you don't have a credit card, and if you can't give them that deposit, you don't get treated. But if you have travel insurance, there's no issue.
Yeah, the problem is, though, the extra costs, because people are paying a lot for holidays, and then they think if you're going to pay 50, 60, 100 euros, maybe even 150 euros per person as you go, like that adds up. That's quite expensive. And then you have people worried that the insurance companies are taking the mick.
Yeah, and you know what, Damien, what I would say, that look, the good thing about these travel policies, there are so many providers now, the cost has decreased quite significantly. So what you'll find is that an individual can get cover now for good cover for €50, a family 100 or 150, but that's an annual policy for the year. So it doesn't matter how many times you go abroad. Every time you step on a plane outside the country, that policy kicks in. So, but you know what, Damien, can I put it this? We've come across so many cases. We had a case recently of a family. Their child was admitted for 1 day with dehydration in a private hospital in Spain. The bill was €750. And if they had bought a €50 travel insurance policy, that would have been fully covered. We had a case about 2 weeks ago of a family who couldn't travel on the morning they were due to fly to Dubai, okay, due to a medical issue. The doctor said, I will not certify you as fit to fly. So they had no option. They couldn't go. And the cost of flights was €3,500, fully paid for by the travel insurance company. So I know most people when they're travelling, they hope they never get sick. Nobody plans on getting sick. But can I tell you, things will happen. Accidents will happen, unforeseen illnesses. The last thing you want is to be worrying about the cost of this, the cost of getting home. And that's why we would say to anybody travelling abroad, if you have health insurance, bring your card with you, because that gives you about €100,000 worth of cover. If you're travelling in the EU, take out the European Health Insurance Card, ehic.ie. You get that for free. And otherwise, if you're travelling, make sure you have a proper travel insurance policy. And Damien, anybody who's travelling outside of Europe, especially to the US, make sure you have a travel insurance policy, because €100,000 worth of cover on your health insurance, that's like 10 days in hospital in the US if you fall seriously ill or you have an accident. So it's bad enough falling ill. Make sure you have proper cover. You hope you never have to use it, but just make sure you have proper cover. And more importantly, check in advance exactly what your cover is. And have you the insurance company, you probably heard me say previously, Dan, about checking everything with health insurance. If you check with them on the phone and they tell you you're covered, that call is recorded, and now you know you're covered, and you know what to do in the event of an emergency should that event arise abroad. We hope it doesn't, but these things do happen.
And I know you have a lot more on the website, totalhealthcover.ie. That's totalhealthcover.ie. Dermot Good, thank you very much.
Many thanks, Damien.
And as you heard there, Dermot, thank you very much. He was he answered a question there for a few people that texted in. What kind of insurance would you need going to America? He answered that question. I don't know why anyone would go to the hassle for a holiday. What's wrong with Ireland, says this texter. How much should it cost for a couple for annual European holidays? Again, he answered that question there on that. Damien, my wife and I had holiday to Australia in March on medical advice. I was advised not to fly. We're still waiting to get the cost of the flights back, and that's from Richie. Well, Richie, I hope you do get back your costs on that. Thomas Byrne has texted in to say he's been in contact with that lady who lost the money, and it was her wages for the week, so she's delighted to have it. So fair play, Thomas, again for doing that. You are extremely kind, and best of luck to the lady. Hopefully she will get spending of that money over the weekend. Now, over the weekend as well, the very best of luck to the Waterford hurlers. They take on Cork at the weekend. And the very best of luck to the Waterford footballers. They take on Westmeath over the weekend in Cusack Park in Mullingar on Sunday at 3 o'clock. We're going to concentrate on the Waterford footballers for the next few minutes. Tomás McCarthy from our sports team has been talking to Brian Luby, one of the senior players on the senior football panel.
So I'm here with Waterford football captain Brian Luby. Brian, you've got some tough qualifier draws over the last couple of years, likes of Monaghan and Derry. What was your reaction when Westmeath came out of the hat?
I suppose we were waiting for the draw. The last two teams come out. We were always kind of towards the end of the draw. So when we got Westmeath, I suppose it was one where you were kind of happy you didn't get like Division 1 teams like Monaghan, but then also looking you didn't get some of the so-called weaker teams in it too. So Westmeath are kind of that in between. They just got promoted into Division 2. So I suppose we were kind of approaching it very similar to the Clare game. It was that kind of reaction where they're probably a bit higher up in the league standings, but we know that it's well within our grasp to make a game of it and hopefully get the right result.
Have you any experience of playing Westmeath over the years, Brian?
2 years ago I think we played him down in Ardmore in the league. I remember myself, I was injured, so I didn't get to play against him myself, but I think that was the only game I can remember us playing Westmeath. It was down in Ardmore a couple of years ago, so that was a tough game. I remember some of their kind of standout forwards played very well, John Heslin and Kieran Martin, but we're just hoping now that we can get a better result this time around.
How were you feeling immediately after the Clare defeat? It was kind of another one of those days where it was so near yet so far, Brian.
Yeah, it was a very kind of similar feeling to past dressing rooms, I suppose, the kind of 1 point loss in a game where, you know, it was there for us maybe if it went on 5 minutes longer. I suppose we're trying to move past those games where you think, oh sure, we were great to get within a point. You know, it really was about the result against Clare, and we came up short in the end, and it's just something we don't really care how we try win the game Sunday week, only that we win it, and the result is the most important thing now. We don't want to come close and be, oh sure, we gave it our best. We really just want to win now, regardless of how we play.
And we're going to be talking to Benji Whelan, the Waterford manager, in a second. Firstly, one man who knows a lot about football in Waterford is Vinnie Murray from Rathcormac. Good morning, Vinnie.
Damien, how you doing? How are things?
Very well, thanks, very well. Vinnie, you're managing the Waterford under-14 team. You've been involved at different levels over the years, at the seniors and juveniles in Waterford in the football, and obviously people know you very well from Rathcormac. You're going up there with a young squad on Sunday, is that right?
Yes, we decided to tie in with the senior match against Westmeath, so we're travelling up with an under-14 football squad early on Sunday morning to play the Westmeath under-14 footballers, and then we'll be on to see the seniors hopefully pull off a big win in the qualifier match against Westmeath.
We'll talk about the seniors there in a second now. How is the state of Waterford underage football at the minute, Vinnie? How would you rate it?
Well, I suppose in the last few years at minor level we've struggled to a certain extent to compete with the other teams in Munster. This year's minor, I suppose, which is always your flagship underage team, ended up in an unusual situation that we had no management team and they were appointed late, but really it was remarkable what they achieved in the end. They were beaten by Tipperary. They came back in the next match a week later and drew with Limerick, and then in their final game in Fairfield they went on to beat Clare, who qualified out of that group and went on to play I think it was Cork or Kerry in the semi-final, you know. So, listen, it varies from year to year. I'd like to think that over the next couple of years, over the last couple of years, there's been a fairly good organisation in terms of under 13, 14, 15 development squads. And
in terms of this big match on Sunday, again, it's Mullingar, Cusack Park, 3 o'clock on Sunday, Waterford versus Westmeath. Westmeath are obviously going in as favourites. They had a good end to their season. How do you reckon this game is going to go? Where is the winning of this game for Waterford?
Well, it's hard to know, really. I mean, away matches in the qualifiers are difficult. That's been proven with results since the qualifiers came in. So an away draw makes it a lot harder. They could have got a lot tougher draw. They could have got one of the Northern Ireland teams. And, you know, even if they were at home, I mean, we saw what Monaghan did from last year. You know, they're just at a far higher level. I think they have a chance. I mean, if you look at Westmeath's results in the league, they gained promotion from Division 3, so it'll be Division 2 next year. But if you look at their results in the league, they had a 1 point win against Offaly. They drew with Carlow. They drew with Louth. I mean, if Waterford were playing either of them teams, any of them 3 teams on Sunday, you'd say we have a chance.
Yeah, they're certainly beatable, all right.
Definitely.
Do you think Waterford should go out from the very start and just go on the front foot and give the likes of Déise and JJ Hutchinson freedom to roam, or do you think Waterford will play it cagey at the start and see how it goes?
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's not being realistic if you think that's going to happen. I mean, when you're playing at home in any sport, and especially at the higher levels, if you go gung-ho away from home and you go for it, unless you're a much better team in the opposition, you're going to get beaten. So Waterford, I can guarantee you, Waterford will be very cagey early on, and that's fine. I mean, they need a tight defence. Maybe, I suppose, against Clare, if you look at the Clare match, they probably went overly defensive and they gave Clare too much respect. And as a result, they were 5 or 6 points down at half-time. But when it loosened up as the match went on, I didn't actually make the match myself, but just thought people were there. If there was another 5 minutes left in that match, Waterford were on the front foot and it was likely that they were going to win it. So I think they will be cagey. They'll probably have to push up a little bit more than they did against Clare in terms of not surrendering the kickouts as much. But and then when they turn over the ball and have possession, they probably have to be a little bit more attack-minded and break their pace if they are going to beat Westmeath. But, I think it will be cagey, definitely the first half, maybe even halfway through the second half. But they have pace in the attack. That's what Waterford have, pace in the attack if they can get our attackers into the opposition's end of the pitch, they can do damage.
Yeah. Vinnie Murray, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Okay, Damien, and best of luck to the seniors on Sunday. We all hope to pull off a great win.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Vinnie. Benji Whelan, good morning. Are you on the line there?
I am, Damien. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good. Thanks for joining us this morning. I think Dermot Keys is on the line as well. Are you there, Dermot?
I am, Damien. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us as well. And best of luck in your new role in the News and Star, Dermot. Fair play to you.
Thanks very much, Damien. Cheers.
Benji, this weekend, Jerry Egan is one of the stars of the Westmeath side. He hit 1-7 for his side, 1-3, which came from place balls in the last game against Laois. How are you going to stop him?
Well, look, I mean, what we'll be doing is we'll be going back, as Vinny said there, the foundation of this group at this point in time and is all about being organised in defence, and that gives us a foundation to push on. And I suppose what we'll be trying to do is cut down the space around the likes of Egan and maybe shut him down to a large degree by doing that kind of a thing, and then expand as the game goes on, I guess.
Yeah, some people would say you did very well, obviously, against Clare. You limited them, and then you opened up in the second half. Others would say if you had done that from the start. But as Vinny says, to go away and be all expansive from the very start could leave you open to damage, or could it be the winning of the match?
Yeah, look, to me, it's all about the evolution of the group. You've got to start somewhere, and we've started basically being neat and tidy and tight at the back, because part of the whole, I suppose, progress of the group will be based on the confidence that the group garners every time they go out. And the last thing you want is to put a pin in that and have it all evaporate on you. So, it's a gradual improvement that we're trying to, I suppose, track for the lads, and they've shown every time, when we come back and we'll say had a look at the way the game has gone and sat down and assessed it, they've taken the lessons that have been handed to them, and they've learned every time. So we'll say, look, the next step is definitely for them to play the group in front of them, play the team in front of them, play the game on its merits. But I mean, at this point in time, Damien, you'll understand that first things first. And eventually then, we'll get to a situation where, when it needs to be expansive, when it needs to be pushed on, the lads will have it within their own compass to go and do it without having to wait for instructions.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that it's all instructions at the moment. It's not. Of course it's not. But I mean, we're hammering home what's important at this point in time. Very early in we'll say, in our, I suppose, instruction with this group. And, we just need to make sure that we don't go backwards instead of going forward. Absolutely.
Dermot, you've been covering a lot of matches over the years. You're well aware with this group of players. They put in an awful lot of work. Benji's put in an awful lot of work. Do you think that's the right attitude to go forward to play this very difficult qualifier match up in Mullingar?
Well, I think you have to. I mean, I think Benji's got a spot on there. I mean, if the lads went and played open and let themselves exposed right from the start on Sunday, then I think in the modern game it would be the wrong way to approach it. I mean, if you're at home, there's natural advantages. You don't have to factor in travel and all the other things that the lads are going to have to do over the weekend. And the fact that you're playing in the ground as well, which you wouldn't be overly familiar with either. It's a long time since a Waterford football team. I think the hurlers would have played there a couple of years ago, but the footballers haven't played there for quite a while. So I think it's got to be encouraging. The fact I think there's been definite progress this year, so Benji's credit on the lads. He's brought in quite a number of new players, and in Darren Mulheron's case, the older player, giving hope for all of nearly 40-somethings. But I think, it's been a steady progress. Maybe an opportunity missed in Ennis, it has to be said, but in saying that as well, a very commendable display when you look at how well Clare played against Kerry last weekend as well. So I think, certainly if this game was in Farrar's Field, would think Waterford would have a fantastic chance of victory. The chances of victory probably lessened somewhat by the away advantage, but by no means is this going to be this is by no means a hopeless case at all for Waterford.
No,
Westmeath will be somewhat confident, but at the same time, Waterford have done well. Things have gone well in challenge matches over the last few weeks as well.
a full complement of players to pick from. So I think grounds for optimism, and who knows, it could be the second year in a row Waterford get to play a third game in the championship.
Absolutely, and you've got some really good big team players there, Benji, like the likes of Shane Ahern and Tommy Prendergast. You've the likes of JJ's been around a while. Desi's brought something more to it. Fergal O'Corrine. There's so many names on that squad that if 10, 11 of those players play to their optimum at least, ye are going to be in with a really good shout on Sunday.
Yeah, 100%. Look, and the other side of it is, in the modern day football game, you've got to have fellas empty themselves. And to their credit, every one of those guys empty themselves every day they put on a jersey. And that's why we are where we are. Talent is God-given, and some guys are lucky to have it, and some guys haven't enough of it, and some guys have too much of it maybe. But at the end of the day, once you put on a jersey and you go out there and you're prepared to give everything you have for the jersey and for the county, you're in with a shout. And especially when you're organised, I suppose, into the bargain, that's what we're really looking for. Yeah, but look, you'd hope that the skills of the game will come to the fore at certain points, and that's what we're after. We're really out there to kind of stay in the game as long as we can, and then the lads are super fit, really happy with their physical conditioning, and you'd hope then that, like, with 15 minutes to go, you get a shot at winning this game.
Dermot, call it 2-point win for Waterford.
Oh, I'd love to say so. Damien, to be realistic, probably at Westmeath, given that they are 2 divisions above Waterford, would be the favourite side. I think Waterford, naturally, given the history in qualifiers, we haven't won all that many of them over the last 20 years, would have to go in as underdogs. But I think the most important thing for Waterford to do on Sunday is to perform. And under Benji this year, Waterford performed in every game, even if results haven't always gone their way. So the progress has been marked. Hopefully we're looking at the foundations been laid for a promotion campaign next year. But you would have to say the odds would probably favour a Westmeath victory.
I go for a 2-point win for Waterford. Benji Whelan, the very best of luck on Sunday. Dermot Keys, thanks so much for joining us. And Benji, good luck, and hopefully we'll talk to you on Monday morning.
Please God. Thanks, Damien. Okay, best of luck.
Thanks, Benji. Thanks very much, Dermot. And Gavin James Glow taking us to the end of another busy week on Déise today. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for producing. Thanks, David Reid, for all the work you've done on social media and putting together the bits and pieces. Thanks to all our news and sports team for the contributions this week. We will talk to you on Monday morning. The best of luck to Galtier, to Passage, to De La Salle, and he being involved in Fela over the weekend. To the Waterford hurlers and footballers, have a great weekend.